Welcome to the NFP Podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host Emily Appledorn each week. Together, we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week, we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP Podcast.
Okay. All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, everyone.
Today, Emily and I are excited because we're celebrating our 100th episode.
Really
and full
is.
disclosure, we just tried to record a little bit of this and the computer just totally shut down on us. So we're going to restart here, regroup a little bit. But yeah, we're really excited that we've made it to 100, which is just amazing. And
Unbelievable.
yeah, absolutely amazing.
Really.
And it's been great to get to see each other once a week. And yeah, we're just having a lot of fun. So
God definitely made the time in our schedules to be able to do this because
For
it felt
sure.
impossible at
for
first.
sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's been so much fun. So we're going to celebrate the 100th episode by going back to the basics, talk about what NFP is, and what responsible love is, responsible parenthood is, and provide you guys with some good resources and information. So if you're listening to the audio file, then you will not see the presentation that we're using. So I will link in the show notes to the YouTube, our YouTube channel, so you can watch the video file if you would like. Otherwise, you can just listen, and I think you'll still get a lot out of it. So let's get started. And we are going to start with first what NFP is. And NFP is actually an umbrella term. Oh, and we did mention this before, but since we are re-recording, we should say that Emily has not seen this presentation yet.
Right.
So hopefully it will be inclusive enough of everything we need to talk about. And if not, I know she'll chime in with good thoughts.
I just loved when this first slide popped up originally when we were just recording. These photos, they never get old. And so it's just like breathtaking. Oh, I love it. I love it.
I love family photos. They're just so great.
Yes.
Okay. So what is NFP? It is an umbrella term. So it encompasses methods of family planning that use biological markers. They rely on the observation of female biomarkers to define fertility and infertility. And then couples can use this information to engage or not engage in sexual intercourse, thereby trying to achieve or avoid a pregnancy. You avoid a pregnancy with NFP when you're using natural family planning by abstaining from all sexual genital contact during the fertile window. So there's no drugs, devices, or surgical procedures involved in that act of abstinence. So abstinence during the fertile window. Practicing of self-mastery, and we'll get into why this is an approved approach for family planning by the church. NFP reflects the dignity of the human person. It respects the marital act, promotes openness to life, and it recognizes the value of the child. And this information that we're talking about is taken from the USCCB website on natural family planning, as well as the Catechism and Humanae Vitae, if people want to look at those sources for more information. NFP respects, I think this is, kind of as philosophical and theological as we'll get on this podcast, but it is a great reflection to ponder. I think a little bit, probably more so for me. I think if I spent more time meditating on this, it would definitely impact my marriage in a positive way. But remembering in whose image we're made and in whose image our marriage is made in a way, in a sense, right? Like that we are reflecting, we are a sign pointing to something greater as a Catholic married couple, that it's a sacrament that we're in, an institution ordained by Christ to point to back to him. And so in order to do that, we have to know who God is. And we know that God is a life-giving lover. And so to respect that in our marriage, and that the image of the Trinity, that communal love, that constant exchange of the Father and the Son, and then the love that comes from them, the Holy Spirit. So NFP respects all of those things, which is a beautiful thing. I also love to point out that NFP is not Catholic birth control. It's not Catholic at all, actually. Again, NFP is just an umbrella term about these methods of monitoring fertility and using abstinence to avoid pregnancy during the fertile window. These are methods that are approved by the Catholic Church for use by Catholic married couples, and as they're choosing to plan their families. So we say it's a tool. It's a tool for couples as they're practicing responsible love and responsible parenthood. But it's not specifically a Catholic thing. It's just based on the science of human biology and what we know to be true about our fertility cycles.
Well, and I think one thing that you mentioned when we were trying to record earlier was just like the reason for the name of this podcast versus like other names. I think that's important to kind of talk through.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about like why we named the podcast the NFP podcast and not the fertility awareness based method podcast or fertility awareness podcast, is specifically because of this worldview of human sexuality that we believe, in practicing the virtue of chastity is something that we practice within marriage as well. And part of that practice in marriage can be abstaining from sexual intercourse from time to time. And that takes self-mastery, it takes self-control, it takes discipline. It's hard, especially when it's it's not impressive, if I say that, like air quotes, right? It's not impressive to not eat ice cream at the ice cream parlor if you don't want the ice cream, right? It's just you don't have a desire for it. What is impressive is if you do have a desire for it, but it's not good for you in the moment or for whatever reason, and you're able to still joyfully participate in the community relationship of other people who are maybe partaking in that, or who are, or whatever the context might be, you are not kind of sullen and sulking about it. You're still able to be one within the community. And so it's kind of an interesting analogy. I'm trying to make the connection here. Then, so within marriage, say we're in the fertile window and both of us are very interested in having sexual intercourse, but both of us also have strongly discerned and agree that we are not open to a pregnancy this month, that we don't think that would be the best thing. We don't think that's God's will for our marriage. And so what do we do with these desires and feelings and inclinations? Well, the church calls us to practice sexual abstinence then. And like Emily and I have said in previous podcasts, that doesn't mean we go live on other opposite sides of the house. We have to then learn to love each other through these days of fertility when we're not engaging in that act, and not treat each other as objects. As means of uses to a certain end, but as ends in ourselves. And so finding other ways to connect during that time. And I know I've mentioned this before on the podcast, saying it sometimes to your spouse is also great. Like, hey, this is really hard. Yeah, this is really hard. But we can get through it together, And so, yeah, I think that's the main reason why I specifically really wanted to use the term the NFP podcast, because I wanted to speak to this greater call of love that we're called to as Catholic Christians within the context of marriage. Because I know some of our Protestant the worldview on human sexuality is kind of abstain until you get married. And then there's, your body is my body, your body's not your own. And so whenever I'm in the mood or whenever you're in the mood, we have this conjugal right to each other and we just should do this. And the church doesn't agree with that. So. Did I miss anything, Emily?
No, I don't think so. I think that's good.
Okay, so let's move into responsible parenthood. And again, these resources, if I haven't mentioned it, Humani Vitae, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. I also pulled a lot of information from the USCCB website. In the Catechism, you can find what we're talking about under the sixth commandment, which says that you shall not commit adultery. So it goes into the union of spouses and what that union should look like. I always like to give a little nod to Joey. I'm sure he's not the only person that's ever used this expression, but he always says the church's teaching on human sexuality and marriage is that sex is for bonding and babies. Which, as the Catechism says in a little bit more detailed language, says that spouses union. I'm going to read a little bit. The spouses union, this is from paragraph 2363. The spouses union achieves the twofold ends of marriage, the good of the spouses themselves and the transmission of life. These two meanings or values of marriage cannot be separated without altering the couple's spiritual life and compromising the goods of marriage and the future of the family. The conjugal love of man and woman thus stands under the twofold obligation of fidelity and fecundity. And you know what, Emily, when I reread that, preparing for this, I was like, I know I've read this a million times.
Definitely.
But this sentence just, I didn't remember it. And it says the two meanings or values of marriage cannot be separated without altering, this is what stood out to me, without altering the couple's spiritual life and compromising the goods of marriage and the future of the family. And I think that that really causes pause, I think, and like demands a little reflection to think, I don't think it's a big deal. In fact, I might justify and say, in fact, this is making me a better parent. I'm not as stressed. I know we're not going to, if I say I use birth control, I'm not thinking that I'm going to be getting pregnant. This is already not a good time to be getting pregnant. Our marriage isn't impacted. Because now we can still continue to have intercourse whenever we want to without this, consequence of potentially having a baby. But here, the church in her wisdom, she says, no, whether you think it or not, your spiritual life is compromised. The goods of your marriage, that means the lives of our children are compromised, the fruit of our love, and then the future of our family, like future generations.
That's what I was just going to say. It feels like generational sin.
Right. That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, I have chills.
I know, me too. It really anyway, I know I've read that before, but it just kind of struck differently to think like, oh, that's right.
I never thought about it in the sense of the future of the family.
Well, now I'm just remembering too, coming off of Lent here, we watched The Passion on Good Friday, which we like to do as a family.
Do you watch it with the boys?
We do. This is the first year we watched it with the twins.
I would love to talk more about that.
They actually, I don't know, people can judge us, I guess, whatever, but the boys love it. I mean, they never have nightmares. It's not like they go to bed and they'll wake up the next day. Because especially, Emily, I forgot to mention this. I wanted to tell you about this too. We watched The Passion and we were like, do the twins want to watch it with us? We just asked. And we didn't watch the first, we watched the first half, and then they came in for the second half. Actually, they came in at the scourging, okay, which is like the most intense part.
Yes.
They watched it, but we have done the stations throughout Lent, Emily.
Yes.
They knew exactly what they were watching. And then after that, when he carries the cross, Blaze sat there on the couch. Oh, Jesus fell for the first time. Jesus meets his mom. That's Simon of Cyrene. I'm like, Lord, because trust me, Stations of the Cross this year, I know I mentioned on the podcast, like I like doing it with my kids, but boy, it was a little rough, Emily. I mean, it was like, I think we had maybe 2 weeks where I feel like I left Stations and like, I felt like my, my soul was still intact. Like I hadn't caused any like angry outbursts because it was, climbing all over the place or jumping this or doing this or being distracting or, Max is rushing through it or whatever it was. But we sat on the couch and he said that and I was like, okay, that was so worth it.
That's amazing.
That's
so amazing.
It was amazing. Anyway, sorry. That was a little sidetrack.
I have so many thoughts. We'll talk
because,
about
because of watching that. Sorry, this is where it came up. Watching that, I turned to Joey and I was reminded, like, you know what I love about The Passion? It's so intense. It's such a good movie, but it reminds you of the gravity of sin. This is what he had to go through. Like he's showing us this is what sin is. Sin is this bad, guys. It's this bad. And we water it down so much, Emily. Like I know I do anyway. Oh, sorry. I water it down and I don't take it as seriously as I should. So anyway, I think in this
for sure.
I think in this context too, it just even, it's really important for us to know, like, this is not a light decision we're making when we're making these.
I also thought of a different aspect with that idea of affecting the future of the family. I don't know the research you would know as far as like, hormonal contraception on, causing couples to struggle to achieve later.
Right.
like after they come off of that. So we could think of that in a very tangible way, like a direct, you know, like in an immediate way rather than like generationally also like in this. And I think it's talking more generationally and like your family and your kids and stuff, but also, I mean, speaking for myself and like, I know there's many couples, women that I've talked to that, you can't help but think, did the contraception, increase my symptoms of fertility, cause my symptoms of fertility? What was the connection there? Was there a connection? Because I personally, just speaking for myself, like I definitely, there are specific things that I'm confident it played a part in. And I know other women, you have those questions and stuff. Those are things we won't know till we're on the other side of this. But I just think that's interesting. Like, I was just thinking about that in relationship to those words. Like,
Right.
you know,
Well,
we
and
don't know.
we do have physiological, studies looking at the impact of birth control on our ability to choose mates,
Yes,
which is really
yes,
interesting.
yes,
I think some people will try to debate that information, and I'll link some of the stuff in the show notes so people can look at themselves. But yeah, how it, altering our physiology to meet
yes,
this goal, this family planning goal, can impact us in more ways than one. So.
yes,
Okay, so let's keep going here. So responsible in these domains. So the church calls us to be responsible as parents in the following domains: in the domains of biological processes, our innate drives and emotions, our physical, economical, psychological, and social conditions, which is what Emily kind of was alluding to, I think, the first time we were
that
recording.
was the first time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she mentioned how the church says, when we talk about serious reasons to avoid pregnancy within a context of marriage, we want to be considering these domains of life. And so the church calls us on to responsible parenthood. And when it uses this term, and this is in from Humani Vitae, when we use this term, one essential aspect is of paramount importance, and I think this is where the prudence and generosity come into play here. It concerns the objective moral order. I'm quoting now directly from Humani Vitae. The objective moral order, which was established by God, and of which a right conscience is the true interpreter. In a word, the exercise of responsible parenthood requires that husband and wife, keeping a right order of priorities, recognize their own duties towards God, themselves, their families, and human society. And from this, it follows that they are not free to act as they choose in the service of transmitting life, as if it were wholly up to them to decide what is the right course to follow. On the contrary, they are bound to ensure that what they do corresponds to the will of God, the Creator. The very nature of marriage and its use makes His will clear, while the constant teaching of the church spells it out. And this reminds me of our interview with Father Mark Gavignon. Am I saying that correctly? From the Discernment Spirit Institute. I'll link that one in the show notes.
I hope so. I hope you're saying it right, because I
loved him. He was so great. But basically, you have to be, in order to be discerning God's will appropriately, you have to be discerning. You can only discern between goods. And the goods in this case would be using NFP. So are we avoiding pregnancy using natural family planning, or are we avoiding pregnancy using ulterior methods? Are we achieving pregnancy using natural family planning and cooperative restorative medicines? Or are we achieving pregnancy using artificial means that interrupt the act and don't correct the underlying causes of infertility? So, all things to consider and all part of responsible parenthood. And like Emily, I know you have said before, and we've talked about in this podcast before too, is the church does not tell you how. I've never heard a priest, and hopefully I never will, tell me or tell anybody how many children they should have, because they can't. During the act of the rite of marriage, and we'll talk about this when we go into what the sacrament of marriage is in later episodes. During the rite, you say you are open to receive children from God as a blessing. That you see children as a blessing, and you're open to life in your marriage, and you say yes to that as part of your wedding vows. And I think what is really important there, and I think the way we've talked about it before is, we think of the vocation of marriage, to some extent, it's similar to the vocation to the priesthood, is that you're kind of signing on a dotted line. You're just saying, Lord, I feel you've called me to this. Here are the tenets, right? Here's the outline of like what this vocation entails. and I'm signing my name along with my spouse, and then he gets to fill in the rest. And so it really is so important, like I had read, that we remember that we are not wholly in charge of the outcomes of our family, and that God is. And we want to grow in, and that's a good thing, right? Because like Mary, we can say yes when it's hard because we know who God is. And that's why Mary, I always love that reminder, right? Why was it so easy for Mary to say yes to the angel? Because she knew God. She had a relationship with God. She trusted God the Father. And I think that's something that the more we cultivate that, I think in our own marriages and our own prayer lives as individual spouses, then our attitude towards this aspect of church teaching into, inviting God into that aspect of our marriage, into the bedroom, as people say, can really make a profound difference on our marriage and on our
Definitely.
relationship with God, in our relationship with God, learning to trust Him in a different way.
Definitely. I think,
So, yeah, go ahead, Emily.
yeah, well, just like the more you kind of understand this aspect of the church and what she teaches, and it it's one of those things that, it's very easy to just like take a bird's eye view about this part of the marriage, depending on, you know, just different things going on in the marriage, so to speak. Like, um, I mean, yeah. And so that being said, the more you understand it, though, I feel like the more, and maybe this is just God's grace, but the more you're able, uh, I feel like it's easier to like accept it, right? And like like enter into it and just yeah, be open to it. I think just the not knowing or the understanding of it all, it just causes confusion um and there is some gray in the sense of like in regards to like avoiding pregnancy, but at the same time, like there's so much that's not gray. And like she's really given us, the church has really given us like so much direction and just wisdom in this part of the marriage. And I feel like there's a lot of married couples that perhaps they don't get deep into this because I feel like it's a little bit easier to go deeper into this if you are struggling to get pregnant. I
Mm,
don't know why that is. Um, I'm not, and that's not a generalized, statement by any means, but I don't know. I just feel like the more you understand it and know about it, understand church teaching, theology of the body, that sort of thing, the more you're like, oh yeah, like this does make sense. Like I want to do this as
right,
opposed to like the church says we have to do this. No,
right,
that's not, that's just, I think it's just a lack of understanding
right.
and maybe a lack of discipline in trying to, learn it, so to speak.
Mm.
I don't know. I'm not
Yeah,
trying to be judgy, but
no, well, I think it's true. The more we know God, the more we love God.
exactly. That's what made me think of it when you were talking about
Yeah,
Mary. Like she
right,
knew. So it made her like, oh, yes, Lord,
right,
like I might be apprehensive, but like,
right,
yes, like I know you. And
right,
so I think there's a lot of apprehension in this part of the marriage, or there can be when it
right,
comes to our families and size and
right,
possibly getting pregnant or not, and
right,
so anyway, the deeper we go, I think the more open to this part of the teaching we
right.
are, I think.
Yeah, and to me, this is like the quote unquote hard part. I think, the observation of biomarkers, which we're going to get into next, is, it can be challenging, but like it's very scientific, kind of cerebral, very good, right? It's kind of the boots on the ground, the humility, like keeps us grounded. But this aspect of marriage, I think, is just one of those things, religious have such structured prayer lives and so many opportunities to commune with God in like a very, kind of traditional prayerful way throughout their day and in their vocation. And I think this is just one way that as a married couple, God has given us this physical union, this marital act, and this relationship, this intimate relationship, regardless of the marital act, whether we're engaging that in the moment or not, to grow closer to Him. It's a sacrament. Like it is, I'll never forget that when the priest told me that once in confession, he's like, pray for the grace to receive more grace through your sacramental marriage. And I was like, that's amazing advice. I've never heard that before. And I was like, yeah, because I am in a sacrament. And it gives you pause, Emily, like a humble pause to say, holy, holy Lord, like holy, God is holy and so good. And he wants that for my marriage. Like, whoa, that is a lot, And I think, yeah, I just think sometimes we just don't talk about that enough. I know for me, like, I don't meditate on that aspect enough because I am such like a practical application type of girl, But I am very contemplative too, in like my prayer time. I do love that. But I think I've just found more, especially in this brief couple of months that my family finds themselves in right now, and my husband and I just having a lot of like family demand on our time and not like time alone as we do when we're in our usual routine. I feel like I'm getting little nudges, thanks be to God, from leftover graces from Lent, probably, but in the practices of Lent, but just these reminders of finding communion with Joey and the importance of that it's not an obligation, that it's a source of sacramental grace to be united to him. And that's really powerful. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, isn't it so cool? Okay. All right. So we're coming down from the spiritual mountain. Well, we're slowly coming down, but we're keeping all the goods from up there, and we're going to get into some of the practical. So what are the mechanisms of action of NFP? What are the methods? How do we practice this? How do we know about our body? I have the first thing that pops up on the slide for those of you that are listening is my favorite image of like poop. Okay. And I use this always because it's a great way to kind of ground us in this concept of biological markers. And our poop, based on the shape, the size, the smell, the color, tells us a lot about our internal health. So this external sign that we see regularly, hopefully, if you're healthy, you're seeing it regularly. By determining what it looks like, you can interpret that to get a good idea of like how your digestion is, how your inner workings are going, and especially nowadays because I feel like your biome is such a hot term in the health world. So poop is a great biomarker. Also, you're taking your temperature, or us moms or people who've been around kids, snot is also a great biomarker because the color of that can tell us a lot about what kind of infection or fever or allergies, whatever is happening in our kids that's causing this external marker to show up. So when it comes to fertility, we also have biological markers, and NFP methods, all these different methods, have basically taken our current understanding of these biological markers, and these are hormonal monitoring, so monitoring and measuring hormone levels in the body, cervical fluid observations and determinations of the timing and the consistency and what it looks like, as well as monitoring your basal body temperature. So temperature, fluid, and monitoring hormones are all ways that we can identify when our female body is preparing to ovulate. And that would be our time of fertility. Whereas outside of that time, we know that we are infertile. And so again, none of this now is religious in its understanding. It is all our physiological, biological understanding. So all of this is related. There's research articles that are published that talk about cervical fluid, that talk about basal body temperature, that talk about different observations of these different things at different times and what it means. And so based on all of this information and data and research, people who are scientists and who are method producers have compiled all of what we know and created a method. And the method is how you would observe these biological markers, either in isolation, one of them, or in conjunction, so multiples of them together. And this method teaches you to observe them, teaches you to interpret them, and then based on that understanding and the interpretation, you and your spouse now come together, know what's happening on a day-to-day basis. So it's prospective. It's happening in real time. You're understanding your fertility one day at a time. You are then making a decision whether to avoid or achieve a pregnancy based on whether you engage or don't engage in sexual intercourse on that day. So we're just using our understanding of biomarkers, and these methods have put together systems and then tested these systems to say, okay, we think, based on all this information, that if you see this sign on this day, that means you will not get pregnant. if you have intercourse on that day. If you see this sign on this day and you have intercourse, you are very likely to achieve a pregnancy. And then they've correlated that with by also monitoring what's happening on the inside of the body. So this is not just kind of a frou-frou, crunchy, well, we think this is going to work, so let's do it. This is based on observation, on research, on our understanding of our physiology. And so those are kind of the underlying mechanism of action, if you will, would be just the body's systems, how the body is working, moving towards ovulation, observing blood during the menstrual bleed. All of these things define different parts of the menstrual cycle. And then couples, again, using a teacher or based on a certain method, they'll tell you what those observations mean, and then you make your decisions from there. And they're usually clumped into different categories. So methods that are only cervical fluid, where you are only looking for fluid and they're teaching you to interpret that. There's cross-check methods where you're using fluid and you're using temperature, or like a symptohormonal method where maybe you're checking fluid and you're also checking hormone levels, or you're just checking hormone levels. And now with all this femtech, right, using technology to help interpret our biological signs and where we're at, there's peeing on sticks and measuring your urinary metabolites is what it's called, but it's just in your urine, they can pick up levels of your reproductive hormones and tell you whether or not you're close to your time of ovulation. So yeah, I think that's kind of all I wanted to say about that. Emily, do you have anything else to add?
No.
Okay.
That was great.
Okay. So we use these biomarkers, and different methods use different ones, and they have their system and they teach you it and then you follow it. That's pretty much what we're talking about. And then if it's NFP, because if you're trying to avoid, you are abstaining during the fertile window. It's also NFP because if you're trying to achieve, you are using the fertile window, with cooperative medical treatments that don't interrupt the marital act to try to achieve a pregnancy too.
Or you can be trying to achieve without, using medicine. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. Right. Without having to use medicine. Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm saying so.
Yeah.
If we're using NFP, we're not using it to time like IUI or in vitro fertilization and things.
Sure.
But maybe we're using NFP in conjunction with an ovulation stimulating drug or something. That's totally fine. We're just trying to get the body to ovulate because the doctors don't think you're actually ovulating.
Yes.
And then you're observing these markers, and then you're partaking of days where you're fertile to try to achieve a pregnancy, have the highest degree of achieving pregnancy. So if you're watching on YouTube, then you see this slide. If not, you're just listening, and I'm going to try to explain it. But I want to just lay this out because it's a good kind of layer of what's happening in the body. And what we're looking at here is kind of moving through the cycle, starting with the cycle of ovulation, what's happening in the ovary, what's happening in the uterus, and what's happening to our hormones throughout the course of a cycle. Every menstrual cycle always starts on the first day of your first bleed, the first day of your bleed. That's the sloughing off of the lining. Hormones are very low. They've dropped, and the uterus is bleeding. So you'll see menses on the outside. Now, in the ovary, as your menstrual bleed goes on for days, the follicles in your ovaries are going to start to grow. Follicles in your ovary are going to start to grow. This produces your estrogen is going to rise. So your hormones are shifting now because it's preparing for ovulation again. The only thing during reproductive years that the female body knows how to do, which is healthy and good, is to ovulate once every month. The month is like the average timeline. And so your body just continually does this. So after the period, follicles maturing, estrogen's now increasing. You're getting close to that time of ovulation. When you're getting close to ovulation, you're going to start to see some type of a cervical fluid discharge. It's going to look like egg whites. After you ovulate, that cervical fluid is going to start to dry up. Your hormones shift now. You drop your estrogen, your progesterone takes over, and you have like a mucus plug. So you're dry. You're not really seeing anything. Progesterone's higher. And most likely you're not pregnant because most women are not pregnant during the course of their reproductive life because they ovulate. They do this once a month. So likely you're not pregnant. If you were pregnant, then your progesterone would stay high. If you're not, after about 2 weeks or so, your progesterone's going to drop off and you're going to start a menstrual bleed again. So over this course and this understanding of the female cycle, we can observe what's happening externally. And that gives us a great indicator on the state of our hormone health, our reproductive health as women to know whether or not we're ovulating, because ovulation is a sign of health. And if, again, you're watching the video, you can see how and why it's a sign of health, because this perfect orchestra of hormones have to be working in conjunction with our anatomy functioning correctly in order to get this ovulatory event to take place. Anything else, Emily, you want to say about that?
No, it's just when you look at it from in all the levels, it's just like, it really is a magnificent orchestra. Like, and it can easily be taken such for granted.
Right.
And like one little thing being off can be really hard to get back on track, and it's really hard to identify if a few things are off and that sort of thing. So you really want this, we've talked about this on other episodes, but you want this to mature during puberty. Like you don't want to interfere with this.
Yeah.
If possible. Like obviously there's things we cannot control, but like externally when it comes to different, hormonal things like hormonal contraception and stuff, perhaps using the birth control pill for painful periods or something like that. Like that can really get in the way of this really maturing.
Right. Well, and I think it also just shows too, like if you're having some type of a cycle issue, kind of the complexity of it. Like look at all the things, all the areas that something could be off. Like, is it my uterus? Is it my ovary? Is it my hormones? It's probably some conglomeration of all of those things.
Right.
Trying to figure that out. And that's why we do love our doctors who are working with the cycle, who are using charting as that blueprint to help address and diagnose reproductive diseases and disorders, because they know like, okay, well, here at this part of the cycle, here's what your hormones should be doing, or here's what your ovaries should be doing, and they're not doing that. Because again, infertility is not the disease, it's the symptom, or cycle issues are not the disease, and ovulatory cycles, right? Those are not the diseases. Those are the symptoms, like what's actually happening underneath. And there's just great doctors doing great things to find those causes so that we can.
I mean, to be fair, it's not surprising that most couples get stamped with unexplained, because there's a lot to this. And how much easier is it to just say, you know what, we're not sure. Here we go.
Right.
Like, when you look at it like this, you can understand that. I'm not saying that's good medicine. I'm just saying you can imagine why that happens.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're not sure. And so we're just going to take all of it and shut it down, and we'll just do our own thing. Thank you very much. And we'll pump you full of hormones. Yeah.
It's just easier. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Which is crazy. So,
yes.
Oh, sorry. The other thing that popped up is the temperature change that you observe. So temperatures are low after you ovulate. Temperatures rise with progesterone, and that's something you can observe again by taking your basal body temperature on a regular basis. But it is definitely a retrospective observation that ovulation has happened. So it's something that people will know or that they will observe to kind of know that they've left the fertile window and now they're back in their time of infertility after they ovulate. And then here's just a list of methods. I'm going to list this in the show notes too. I love this image. This is from our friends at Facts about fertility. And it just kind of separates them all into different categories. So cervical fluid method, symptohormonal method, calendar method, lactational amenorrhea, lactation methods. And she has little stars and asterisks by the ones that are evidence-based. So they have some peer-reviewed research to go along with them. And that's not to say the ones that aren't peer-reviewed are not great methods too. Some of them just don't have the research out published yet. Some of them are that doesn't mean they haven't used research to develop their method. They just haven't tested their method specifically. And so anyway, Emily and I if I'm not speaking correctly, correct me, okay, Emily, but big believers of the right method for you. The best method is whatever's the right method for you, whatever method's going to work for you and for your spouse and your marriage. And that can change over the course of your reproductive years and over the course of your marriage. I'm sure it likely will.
Yeah. So, I never want a couple to give up on natural methods because a certain method didn't work for them.
Right.
There's so many different options out there. Just keep seeking, keep searching, keep trying.
Right.
That can, while you're trying, that can lead to perhaps longer times of abstinence.
Right.
Due to trying to figure things out during a certain time. But don't give up, because there will be a method that's right for you. We just have too many options nowadays that are good methods.
Absolutely. And more research being done too,
yes,
which is super exciting. I'm just remembering this. So one of the methods on here says Taking Charge of Your Fertility. It's a book. I'll never forget. I had this, just to remember this. I totally forgot about this, but it's a funny, humbling story for me to share. So when we were up at business school, I was just becoming a fertility practitioner, fertility crate model practitioner. And, gung ho, like this is the best thing since sliced bread. Everyone needs to do the Creighton model. And I remember one of these girls that another spouse in the business school, her husband was going to business school with my husband. And they were trying to get pregnant and they were having a little bit of a hard time. So she got this book, Taking Charge of Your Fertility, and she's tracking her fertility according to this book. And I'm sitting there like, this is not right. Like, this is not good, and you need to be using the Creighton model. And I don't think I ever said anything. I think I just kind of would. Yeah, I would kind of like passively make comments, not negative comments, but like, hey, I teach this. And if you're ever interested. And she wasn't. She was happy with her book. She went on to have her kids and totally fine. Everything worked great for her. The book worked great. She sung its praises, told everyone about it. But at the time I was just like, oh, this is not evidence-based. This is not right, because it wasn't what I was doing. I don't know. But now I'm like, great. If it works for you, fantastic. Taking Charge of Your Fertility, fantastic book. Awesome. It's helped so many women. That's great to know your body and to plan your family in a way that whether or not you believe in the church's teaching that honors God and honors your marriage. And that's fantastic. So anyway, that's younger me, younger, naive, early teacher, Amy. Okay. So final thoughts here. NFP is both spiritual and physical, which is why I find it to be such a powerful practice in our marriages, as Christians, as Catholics. And you track according to your season in life. So NFP, right, can just focusing on that virtue of chastity, which can be starting young. We want to be learning how to love in whatever season of life we're in well. And you can be charting your cycle young, which is something that we really encourage young girls to do, is to know their bodies. And, you can track it differently. It doesn't have to be with a very specific teacher and a very specific method. If you want to do that, great. But again, if you just want to know, like, okay, so apparently people tell me I have this mucus, then just every time you go to the bathroom, pay attention to how it feels when you wipe, if you have any mucus on a tissue. And then if you have a calendar on your phone or on your refrigerator, you can just mark on days when you start to see mucus and then just slowly start to track that. That's like just becoming aware of your body is a great thing when you're younger. It's going to be really insightful as you're moving through puberty and the early years. And then as you're growing into womanhood, your body is changing. You can also then dive deeper into what you've been seeing, but you already get a good grasp of how you're feeling and what that's like. And we just had Dr. Laura Bryden on talking about adolescent cycles, and I'll link to that in the show notes as well if you're interested. And then as you get older too, you're heading into perimenopause, you're just in your reproductive years, whatever it is, your season, it's going to change, and that's okay. Don't let young, naive fertility educators or NFP educators like I was make you feel bad about whatever it is you're doing, because if it's where you're at right now and you're trying and it's working for you, that's great. That's really great.
And it's also so empowering. It's just so empowering. Like as a young girl, I know, we talked to so many women. I think you and I would agree. I would love to know what my body was doing in high school. No idea. Like I have the memory of the period,
right?
But everything else is a blur. Right. And so it is, I would think as a high schooler, and we've worked with young girls before and talked to young girls, how empowering to know this is what my body is doing. This is a sign of health. Or you know what? I'm having really long cycles. This is not what my body is doing. Right. And so just having that knowledge, it's just, that's invaluable.
It is. And we just had on Christina Valenzuela too last week, so I'll link to her show again too, but talking about how we can be sharing this with young men as well, which is just really awesome. Also work with a trained educator. I know it's hard to hear that, but most of these methods, the effectiveness is based on working with a trained teacher, and that's because they can help you interpret things. You don't have to figure things out. Now, that being said, there are people who don't, and smart women who read the books and understand, and they just do their own thing, and they find that to be helpful in helping them achieve their goals. I know women that do that. So that's totally fine too. I'm just saying the evidence suggests that if you, and know yourself, if you feel unconfident with this, well, get with a teacher. They know what they're doing and they can help guide you and then maybe if you feel confident at a certain point, you can stop working with them. And then if you need to go back to them, you can go back to them. So use our trained educators. They are trained for a reason. Pray, heal, and teach. So this is something that I was thinking about is, in our families and our marriages, right? We're wounded people in this world. And so praying through wherever we're at with this aspect of church teaching and of God's will for our marriage. If we're struggling with it, if we're blossoming in certain areas, praying in gratitude for that, praying for deeper healing, reaching out to get help, whether it's psychological or relationship help that we need. And the teach part, because we just had on Christina Valenzuela again, and it was a good reminder to me. And then reading that encyclical about, we are as parents the primary educators of our children in all areas of life, including this. And so if I'm not empowered with the knowledge I need, well, then the onus is on me to find that information now. And there's just so many resources. So we'll link to Pearl and Thistle's awesome programming for married couples, for engaged couples, for young people. So they can look that up, as well as Natural Womanhood. They've got young people programs as well. So yeah, so we'll link to all of that. And then the last thought I just wanted to say was that your goals change as your life changes. And that's totally okay to go through seasons of trying to achieve and of trying to avoid based on whatever is happening in your family and in your life. That's okay. And not to kind of beat up on yourself don't family compare, don't family size compare that one family size is better than another. Big, beautiful families are beautiful. We don't know what's happening in those marriages. We want good things. So we're not going to assume bad things either. We're going to assume great things. And small families can be used in profound ways as well, because God is the author. So as long as God is the author of our family size, then we can trust that it is good and beautiful in his sight. And there's no sterile options. So as long as we're not sterilizing the act in any way, and we don't want to have sterile relationships. We want to be growing, moving forward. Just in that season, we're in that season of Lent, right? There's new life. There's newness. There's just that the waters in the holy water fount. I mean, all those things you feel when you go to Mass on Easter morning of like, oh, praise the Lord. Like Jesus is risen. There is redemption. There's life again, and that's just so encouraging. So yeah.
Just to elaborate on the sterile options, like the church never calls us to sterilization, no matter what. And if there's anybody listening to that may have already been down that path, or maybe their spouse has, that's the church gives us the sacrament of confession. And I know we've talked about this before. Depending on when you come to understand this church teaching at different times in the marriage, maybe it hasn't always been, something that you followed. There are, some couples will practice, some couples that have gone through sterilization procedures. Some couples will still practice a form of natural family planning in the sense that they go through the motions of the discipline of abstaining during the fertile window as a sign of, discipline for God. And I mean, you could say many things, honestly, perhaps, trying to redeem what's been done.
Right.
Or make reparation, I should say. So anyway, we just have so many options. Right. And I don't think we touched on it. We may have touched on it when we recorded a little bit before we got this one recorded, but NFP is not Catholic birth control. Did we say that at the beginning of this one, Amy?
Right.
I don't remember.
No, I don't remember. Yeah. But yeah, it's a good point. Yes. No, it's not Catholic birth control. Nope.
Because there's so much confusion about that, I think.
And that's the formation part of it, right? When we're discerning and we're being formed by our priests and by our community in what marriage is, it's that we are called to a generous openness to life. And so, as we're discerning, if say we're discerning, a child during this specific cycle at this right moment, we're just not thinking so long. Fertility is really not meant to be a long-term thing. Like, that's one thing I love about NFP. And even when I talk to couples that are like, well, what if we can't have intercourse, on this day? I'm like, okay, well, that's like in a week. So if you're thinking about that, do you want to have intercourse today? Then we kind of only really need to worry about today. Or, well,
very true. Very true.
Or should we have another kid in another year? I don't know. That's a year away. Let's stay in today. Do you want to have another baby today? No. Okay. Are you fertile today? Well, no, we're not fertile. Then you have not, I don't even know why we're having this conversation right now. Like it really is. I mean, in a sense, like let's just take this to like the present moment because I think when we get into past and future, well, we're going to go crazy. Just today. You want to have intercourse today? Do you want to have a baby today? Are you fertile today? Like answering these questions, asking these questions and not getting so, I guess, bogged down even like,
well, or fearful. I think it's fearful.
Right. Right. No
We do
motivation of fear. No motivation of fear.
Yes, we do a lot with married, engaged, marriage prep couples.
Right.
And the topic just came up recently for me was, we think we want X amount of kids
Right.
and we want to have them soon. So that means ideally we're going to be done by the age of like 35 and we might be fertile for 10 more years and blah, blah. I'm like, okay.
Right.
Hold on,
Right.
like, and I just remember just saying, just very simply, like, God loves your plans. He does. He loves your desires. He loves everything about that. But we just have no idea how we're going to be feeling at that age. Who knows what our family life will look like at that time because this is what we want, but we don't have all the control over that.
Yep.
So we just never know how the Holy Spirit is going to ebb and flow within our marriage, and we never want to do anything to separate us from that ability. So
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. We don't know how we're going to feel. And I have walked this with so many people to hear, when they have a baby, right? Like some people when they have a baby, they're like, I'm ready for another baby right away. And some people when they have a baby, they're like, nope, I would not like a baby especially within this first year. Like I'd like to not be pregnant right now. Okay, that's fine. And then in fact, oh, you know what? Let's end with this. I just randomly bumped into this person because this is what happens to me all the time. I randomly meet people and I have no desire or I'm not trying to start about family planning. Family planning always comes up in the conversation. So anyway, it came up in this conversation and this woman was so like vulnerable and it was such a sweet conversation and kind of a passive comment, but like it stuck out to me. And shared that, like they didn't do anything. They just didn't have a baby for like the first 5 years of their marriage. And then they had a baby and wonderful, happy, and they wanted to have another baby and they weren't having another baby. And she hit 40 and she was like, okay, well, I have this one baby. I'm content. I'm happy. Like this is, God's gift. And then of course she's content and happy. So she gets pregnant. So she got pregnant. And so she had another baby. And what did she say? She said at the time, after she had the baby, she had a C-section, and she told the doctor to tie her tubes because she just couldn't see having another baby as she got older, and it was just going to be too much. And she goes on with the second baby, and she's potted training the second baby, and she's just like, oh, I'm, feeling like I made the right choice. Like this is just a lot. I'm so tired. And then she said, and then that baby turned 3. She's like, and right when they turned 3, I thought, oh, I could do this again. Like I could have done this again. And she's 43 at that point, And I feel like that was and I've heard so many stories like that. I've heard so many stories like this. And I say that to just prove this point even more so. Like we don't know. And I think the church in her beautiful wisdom teaches us to not choose these sterile options, to not choose this path because we just don't know. And he doesn't want us to live in regret. Doesn't want us to live in regret and sorrow. So, okay, my kids have to go. My kids need me. So now we have to definitely wrap up. We will see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening, for watching. Okay. Bye, Emily.
Bye.
That wraps up another episode of the NFP Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.